Hi everyone, this is Darren from SimNation. Just doing a recap video for SNCFL, which is our draft day sports college football 2025 league here. It is the oldest draft day sports college football league here at SimNation. Goes back really to the beginning of the game. Of course, it feeds WWPF, which I'll do a video on here shortly. But if you're interested in joining a really good online league, we have a lot of good teams, but we also have a lot of good coaches in this league. So definitely let me know. I'll put the Discord link in the notes, and just let me know if you're interested. So we're now week 2 has completed. We're now moving into week 3. The first 2 weeks is generally not a big controversial time frame at all. It's generally the really powerful teams pounding the tar out of the really not so powerful teams. So we haven't had a whole lot of upsets so far this year. If you look at the top 25 is really the same top 25 it's been most of the season. Now the top 5 has moved around a little bit. That's not abnormal at the beginning of the season to see that. So Georgia currently is the number 1. That is Sharks team. Maryland is number 2. That's mine. You have UCLA at number 3. That's Stewart. Skelton comes in at number 4 with his Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. And then number 5 and number 6, Western Michigan and Michigan, both are Stewart teams. Skelton has his Oklahoma State Cowboys at number 7. Invisible has his Auburn Tigers at number 8. Cincinnati is DWK. He comes in at number 9. For whatever reason, Kevin hasn't played a game yet at Miami, but he'll get underway here shortly. I think, unfortunately, he's probably going to get screwed by the calendar, but Miami's at number 10. Iowa State's an open team, so is Rutgers, Colorado State, Florida State. So if you're interested in joining the league, all 4 of those teams are actually good teams. Duke Blue Devils are Stewarts. They've taken a little bit of a hit because they didn't trounce one of a lower team quite like they should have. You have Shark coming at number 16 with Coastal Carolina. Matt is at number 17 with Clemson. And then if you go down a little bit, Louisiana Lafayette is Invisible Witnesses Sunbelt team. He's coming in at number 21. You have Starfinder at number 22. SOA is at number 24. And then if I remember correctly, I think Indiana is Bama, if I remember correctly, and I could have that wrong. I should know this stuff off the top of my head, but sometimes I don't always know. Yeah, it is Bama. So as you can see, not a huge amount of movement. We'll dive right into kind of what's going on in the different conferences. So generally, if you remember the beginning video I made, kind of Florida State, Clemson are the 2 teams that will be competing for the title. NC State may make a run because that's Starfinder, but really it's Florida State and Clemson. And when I say Florida State and Clemson, it's really Clemson. Matt is a really good coach. Expect the word out of him. The only challenges he may have is when he has to play the Coastal, which does have quite a few humans in it nowadays. So Duke, of course, is the leader right now over in the Coastal. Miami, of course, hasn't started playing yet. Virginia Tech, who is Bama, is 1-1. And they lost, I think, their opener, if I remember correctly. But it should be a pretty competitive race. Stewart, Bama, and Kevin, so Duke, Virginia Tech, and Miami should be the ones competing for the title. If you look at the week so far, the coming week, Miami should beat Washington State relatively easily. Virginia Tech should upend Marshall pretty easily. Tennessee is Udo out of the SEC. He should beat Louisville. And then Clemson, this will be a good game, but if Kevin was at Rutgers, I would say this is a push, but he's not. So I think Clemson wins this one just because Matt knows how to game plan really well. NC State should drop Florida International, so Starfinder should get them relatively easy. Poor Boston College gets Skelton and Louisiana Monroe. I don't think the 6-point spread is going to cover that one. I think that's going to be much, much worse than that. And then, of course, Duke gets a cream puff in New Mexico. Again, Duke is probably going to just pummel New Mexico. There's not a lot of signings so far. I may have to adjust the zoom on this, but we'll leave that alone for now. When we go to the American Athletic, the main team of concern here is Cincinnati. Candidly, Cincinnati should win this division. Houston met up. Houston would have been the other pick. They're still ranked. They only lost one game, and if I remember correctly, they lost to someone who was pretty good. But at the end of the day, Cincinnati, Houston should be there at the end. Memphis is a good team to keep an eye on as well. They traditionally have played above, they punch above their weight, to use a boxing term. But I do expect DWK and Cincinnati to be on top at the end of the season. Florida and SoA should beat Navy relatively easy. Poor Houston's just going to have a bad run of events. They get Coastal Carolina and Shark. While Coastal Carolina is out of the Sun Belt, they are kind of a powerhouse. Probably not too different than when they had, I forget what his name was, but when they were playing a few seasons ago in real life. Cincinnati should relatively Z down Stanford. This will be a game to watch. App State is my zero to hero team. They should beat South Florida. They've already upset one team. They beat UNLV last week, so I'm pretty confident that they should be able to do that as well. Big 12 wise, the Big 12 is kind of just moving along. Iowa State, of course, is a CPU team. Shark had them in the past, kind of built them into a really good team. Then you have Oklahoma State, which is Skeletor, Starfinders at BYU. You have me at Colorado, and then you have Gary at Oklahoma. I don't think I missed anybody in there, but if I did, I'm sorry. Um, this week, Notre Dame takes on Baylor. This is one of my teams. Notre Dame should win this one. Baylor's not that good. They used to be, but they're not now. Oklahoma should beat Nevada. Again, even though Oklahoma had if I remember correctly, I think that they lost last week. I forget to who, but Oklahoma generally is a good team. If Gary was managing them week to week or adjusting the game plans, I think that they'd probably be 2-0 at this point. Invisible should handle Texas relatively easy from Auburn. Auburn's a really good team this season. Colorado should get by Akron and get to 2-1 and kind of get back on a winning streak. Um, we talked about Oklahoma. Well, we didn't talk about Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State should get by Illinois relatively easy. Oklahoma State's a powerhouse in this league, especially from a rushing perspective. As you can see, if I remember correctly, Carl Lawson is the league leader. And just bear in mind that 435 yards is across 2 games. So he's definitely making a good rushing effort. This is probably the guy I think will win the Doak this year. Just Skeletor has a long history of having very, very good running backs. If we move to the Big Ten, you see it's kind of logjam at the top. You have Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, Michigan, Penn State, all who are undefeated at this point. Maryland, of course, is my team. Rutgers was Kevin. If you're interested in joining the league, this is a really good team. Kevin did a good job in building them up. This is Bama. Bama has already started to turn Indiana around. They may actually resemble the real life Indiana. Michigan is Stewart. Coming into the season, it was relatively thought it would be Maryland or Michigan who would be up at the top. And I think Starfinder is taking over Penn State tonight, if I remember correctly, which should be interesting. And then if we look at the other side of it, really the only team that I think is active right now is you have Joe Dorman, sorry, at Iowa, who's 0-2, but Iowa had some issues. He'll work that out quickly. He had Wisconsin before. And then you have, I think that may be it actually now. Yeah, I think that is. But if you're interested in joining Minnesota, Northwestern, Nebraska, Nebraska and Wisconsin are really good teams. I would say that if you want to join the Big Ten, these are probably the 2 teams you would look at. Ohio State is open, but they're kind of reserved. There's a coach who's already let me know he wants to take them next season, and I'm generally just going to hold them for him. This week, Georgia Southern, who If I remember correctly, that is DWK's second team against Purdue. He should win that one relatively easy. Maryland will probably thump Louisiana State. Maryland right now is averaging close to 60, 70 points a game and only giving up like 3 or 4 points. So that'll change once they get into Big Ten play. Alabama, if I remember correctly, Alabama is now DWK's third team. I like Alabama over Wisconsin in this, so we already talked about Clemson. Iowa should down Utah. Michigan will make quick work of Western Kentucky. I don't really see Western Kentucky putting up much of a fight against Michigan. Same thing for Indiana versus Middle Tennessee. I don't really see Middle Tennessee being able to really get past Bama. And then we talked about Oklahoma State and Illinois already. Just a note right now, one of the one of the things about the Big Ten is traditionally this has been one of the toughest conferences outside of like in the past the Big 12 and the SEC. So if you want to join it, there are quite a few humans in this conference. It's a great conference to join, but I would also highly recommend the SEC in the Big 12 as well as the ACC. Conference USA, again, not many humans in this league. UTEP is off to a strong start. They're a team to watch. So is Western Kentucky. It's just they have a really hard opening. A little shocked with Marshall with how they're doing, but of course they also had a hard opening as well. Florida International may be there as well, and those are just the teams to watch. Independence-wise, Notre Dame, of course, lost the opener to USC, and then they bounced back last week, beating Georgia Southern. They get Baylor. They should defeat Baylor relatively easily. The MAC is dominated by Western Michigan. This is Stewart's team. I don't expect that to change. He doesn't really have a natural competitor right now. So just don't look for much change there. If you want to join a league and try to go against one of the best coaches, this would be the league to join to go against Stewart. Mountain West wise, again, not a whole lot here to keep an eye on. UNLV is a good team. They did get knocked off last week. Kind of shocked by Appalachian State. I'll put up a video later on the game planning for that. And then, of course, Colorado State is a really good team as well. James Madison, this is SOA versus Wyoming. James Madison should win this. We talked about this one. Oregon versus Colorado State. This one will be interesting because this is my stealth zero to hero team. Well, I just didn't do anything. I took the team as they are. We'll see if they can get an upset this week against Colorado State. Duke versus New Mexico, we talked about that one, and then the rest of the games are just CPU. So it'll be interesting to see. Right now, if you look at this, Brock Hart is just having a season. 36 of 64 for 1,093 yards. He's averaging pretty much close to 30 yards per completion, and that's just insane. So, and a third of his completions are touchdowns. So we'll see if someone can slow him down a bit or slow down Holland Wisniewski. But it'll be interesting to see if they get past the Oregon game. I think that they have pretty smooth sailing until they get to like the conference finals, where they'll probably run into San Diego State or UNLV. In the Pac-12, California is Bama, Oregon is mine. Right now, California is probably the odds-on favorite to win the North. The teams in the North aren't very good. Washington State used to be very good, but they've fallen on somewhat hard times. Same with Stanford. Just keep an eye on California. Oregon probably is not going to compete just because they don't have a great roster. No shock here, though, with the fact that UCLA is up there. UCLA is actually the best team in this conference, hands down, no questions asked. If you're interested, USC is a good team. So is Fresno State. I would highly recommend both of those teams if you're interested in joining the Pac-12. We haven't changed it, and I don't intend to change that anytime soon, just because I'm not a big fan of conference realignment. If I thought I could swing it, Maryland would still be in the ACC. But at the end of the day, we'll have the Pac-12 around for a while. California versus Southern Alabama. This one should be relatively easy, as Bama will probably down Southern Alabama quite easily. Mentioned this one before, as well as this one. Miami should beat Washington State. Cincinnati should beat Stanford. Oregon will try to beat Colorado State. I'm not entirely confident that they will, so we'll see what happens with that. Iowa should beat Utah. And then, as you can see, is Glenn Brewer right now is the top passing quarterback. We'll see if that just continues to hold true. In the Southeast Conference, it's pretty wide open still. You have Bama, but Bama also got a new coach. So in DWK, look for him to start turning that around. LSU is an open team if you're interested, but they're probably not going to be undefeated after this week because they take on Maryland. Auburn is Invisible Witness. He's off to another strong start. So is Louisiana Monroe with Skeletor. Mississippi is a CPU team as well. They haven't really played anyone, and you can see they're giving up a lot of points, whereas the two top teams here in ULM and Auburn are already off to pretty strong starts. Georgia is Shark. Of course, he's at number one. You have Udo at Tennessee. You have Soa at Florida. And I think that's all the people that are in the SEC right now. I would say that South Carolina is an interesting pickup if you're interested, as is Vanderbilt. But just bear in mind that you're going to have to go against Shark, and Shark is a pretty good coach. So, mentioned these games already. There's no game here. Florida should beat Navy. Maryland will probably drop LSU. Tennessee should beat Louisville. Alabama should beat Wisconsin. ULM or Louisiana Monroe will rout Boston College. Auburn, this game could be closer, but I really don't see Texas beating Auburn. Invisible is pretty locked away or locked down on that, and he should be able to win it. This is an intriguing matchup with Vanderbilt versus Iowa State. I do like Iowa State just because Shark did a good job of building them up. In the Sun Belt, right now, Invisible's off to a great start. I think he knocked off like Colorado last week, if I remember correctly. And then you have Shark, who has been the leader in this space for some time. Appalachian State is off to a good start. Granted, they really haven't played anybody strong yet. Georgia Southern, their loss was at Notre Dame, so that's not as big of a deal. And I do look for them to bounce back. So, as I mentioned, California should drub South Alabama. Georgia Southern should handle Purdue relatively easy. This is a good game, but I still see Coastal winning it, probably by 2 touchdowns. I just see this being nowhere close to 3.5 spread. It'll probably be a 2 touchdown or more win for Louisiana Lafayette. And Appalachian State should get by South Florida by more than a touchdown. So it'll be interesting to watch and just see. From a league leader perspective, what I would say, oh, actually, we talked about the games this week, but from a league leader, I mentioned Brock Hart. He's just having a really, really good season right now. Jack Daniel from Ole Miss is up there, and then the first human quarterbacks you really have is Glenn Brewer and Jerry Cruz from Oregon and Tennessee, respectively. Passing touchdown, again, Brock Hart is having a really good season, but you also have Marvin Herman and Jerry Cruz up there as well. Passing rating, this won't show people like Marvin Herman because he's just not getting enough attempts, but Gary's quarterback Edwin Moore is leading with Jerry Cruz second, and they're all relatively close to each other. Rushing yards, I mentioned Carl Larson. He's having a really good season. William Batts is DWK's running back at Cincinnati. Robert Monaco's SOA's at Florida. Russell Hanson is Starfinders at BYU. And then you have a quarterback in John Schindler, who is one of the leading rushers as well. Traditionally, you'll see a lot of human control teams running back because there's a lot of running in this league. Georgia is off to a strong start, but you see Robert Barclay, Miguel McAfee, both tied for the league lead right now, with Kenneth Campbell lurking as well as Bernard Castellano. Receiving, Byron Ashley's having a really good year with 350 receiving yards. That's in 2 games, so that's a really good average. And then also you can see that right now Dennis Keck is the leader. Touchdown wise, again, it's a battle between three different ones. Uh, Marios, who is BYU and Starfinder's primary receiver, Jeffrey Roper, who is Maryland's top wide receiver, and then of course Larry Schnell, who's with the CPU team. Sack wise, it's very uncommon to see any human teams uphill because the CPU tends to dominate this one. But just keep an eye on Jacob Bills, who is with Georgia. He's having a really good season so far. Same thing with interceptions, although right now John Creighton is having a pretty good start to his year, but those William Petty and Dominic Haley who are also tied. Way too early to try to even forecast who's going to win the Heisman. It's just really too early. So that's kind of the state of the league. Week 3 will run tonight. If you're interested in joining, again, there are some really good teams out there. Recruiting is just getting underway. I don't think any big name recruits have come off the board yet. Um, yeah, none of the big name recruits have come off the board yet. So that probably won't happen until after this week. But if you want to join, Discord is in the notes, and we'd look forward to having you. Otherwise, we'll talk to you soon, and thank you for your time tonight.